Hi folks, today we're just going to make a real quick start demo Flask app. So to begin, the first thing we do is actually just create a project directory. Um, so I'm going to make one maybe in my documents folder. Just going to call it new Flask app. Okay, and now I'm going to open this in a command line. So I can, if I right click on this, just grab, copy it, and then open up a command window. And then cd to that directory. So now I am in the my new Flask app directory, and this is where we're going to build our app. Notice first of all, there's nothing in this directory right now. We can also just do a dir like this. There's nothing in it. But we want to spin up a virtual environment, and Python gives us this capability or tool to sort of spin up a virtual environment, which allows us to add libraries that instead of being sort of added to the Python global context, just get added to individual Python projects. So let's create that virtual environment. You go here and you type Python VNV. And you'll see it's sort of kind of, and notice it actually created VNV folder now inside my new Flask app, and you can see it's sort of creating stuff, and we just finished making that VNV. If we look inside the VNV folder, we can see a scripts folder, and there's a bat here somewhere, activate bat, which we're going to run to actually spin up the virtual environment. And then in addition, there's this live folder with site packages in it, where you can add new libraries. And we're going to add the Flask library to the site packages. So the first thing we're going to do is spin up the virtual environment. So we go here and we type VNV slash scripts slash activate. And I've noticed in some contexts, like I think on the instructor computer in 318, these actually have to be forward slashes. So if this doesn't work for you, try forward slashes. And it didn't like that. So let's try. Oh, I spelled it wrong. And notice now when we spun it up, you see this VNV parentheses before the actual prompt. We know now that the virtual environment's spun up. And now we can install Flask. So we go pip install Flask. And this will add, there you see, it just got added to this folder in the virtual environment. It got added to the site packages folder. And by the way, pip is a utility you can use for adding different libraries to your application. And if you type pip list, you can see all the libraries that have been added to your virtual environment. In this case, we have Flask installed, so we're ready to go, as well as Jinja 2, which is a markup language that Flask uses to kind of do PHP related stuff, where you can render variables and do some sort of simple conditionals and looping. But we'll get into that more later. Now I'm going to just create the project directory in my Atom editor. You can use whatever editor you like. And now having created it, you can see it here, and basically all we have is the VNV folder in there. So let's add a file, or sort of a main file that runs our website. And we're going to call it app.py. And okay, we got it. And now we're going to access, copy and paste some quick start Flask code that just gets a most basic Hello World application up and running. So I think if you just type in Flask quick start and click here, you can find the site, and let's run this minimal application. That's all we need. Copy it in here and save it. And now we have our app.py file. It should be located. So this is our directory structure, app.py VNV. And we're actually ready to run our application. So we go back to the command line and type flask run. And it's telling us that it's now running at this particular with this particular URL. So port 5000, you can copy and paste this URL in, or you can just use localhost like this, 5000, and you can see that it says hello world here. And just to sort of look very briefly at the code here, we've on this first line imported the Flask library. We spun it up on this line. And then we have this function that's being called here, which outputs or returns hello world. And then above it, we have something called a route, which is associating a particular URL, right? The URL, the sort of the root URL, which in this case is localhost 5000, with this particular function. So when we request the root URL, it runs this function and outputs hello world. So let's actually make a different route and a different function. So we'll call this maybe contact, and we'll call this contact function maybe. Save it. And now, actually, having now saved this, we actually have to restart the web server because we're running the production, and we're running the production instance. If you actually can see, it says environment production. This is so let's start the web server by typing Control-C, and then start it back up again. And now if we call localhost 5000, we get the hello world page. If we now do this and we do contact, you get the contact page. So one thing about running it in production mode is that every time you make a change, you actually have to restart the web server to see the change. So let's say we add XXX here like this, save it, and now refresh the page. Well, go back to the main page. We still get hello world. What we really want to do in a development environment is when we make the XXX change, or whatever change we make, for it to restart the web server automatically. So let's do that. If we stop the web server and we type Flask and now do Flask run. Notice now it says development. So now when we ever make a change here, Let's you get XXX, but watch me make a little change here, like this, save it, and watch what happens down here as I save it. I'm saving it now, and notice that the web server restarts automatically so that when I come up here and refresh my page, it renders without me having to restart it again. So make sure to put it um, in development mode. Okay, so we do have some very basic functions here. Uh, let's change these functions, give them more better names like home and contact page, maybe call it contact page. Um, and these will still run fine. Um, but we're only really outputting very simple messages here. We could actually put some HTML in here, but it would be cumbersome to write out a really big page this way. So what you want is sort of a templating system to be able to output bigger pages. So what we need to do is add a templates folder. Call it templates. And this is where we can store our templates. So let's make an index.html page and a contacts page. And in templates, now that we have index.html, we can add some HTML here. So now that we created our index and our contacts page, we want to be able to render these. So we need to change our routing functions a little bit. And the way we do that is, let's comment this out. Comment this out. And so we use the render template function, or render template command, Flask command. And here we want to return, what do we call it, contacts.html. Now if we actually try to, the web server is restarted because it detected a change. But if we try to now request the root, as it were, let's do that, we get an error. Render template is not defined. And as you're developing pages, this is probably one of the most common errors you're going to find, is something like something is not defined. And you see it also outputted here in your console. And this is actually, Flask comes with its own debugging utility here, but I've just preferred to use, you're welcome to explore it on your own, but I prefer just to look at the error that's output in the command from the command line. But we do have this error render template is not defined. And what's happened is we just haven't imported the render template library. So let's do that now. Save it. The web server restarts, and now let's run it again. Now we get the My Main page, and then we can also do the contacts page. What's the URL for that? Contact. My contacts page. Okay, so that's all we accomplished today in class. Hopefully you followed this and gotten this all up and running. What we'll be doing next is linking pages, learning how to link pages, working with the Jinja 2 syntax, and learning how to extend pages. Because right now we're duplicating a lot of code between the contacts page and the index page. We want to figure out a way where most of the stuff that duplicates is put in one page, and then we just extend it to these other pages. So that's what we'll be doing in our next lesson.